Snow lashes sideways across a $10 million mansion as Lily Harper clutches her thin coat, confused why a holiday assistant is suddenly standing beside Ethan Caldwell in front of his powerful family, his hand tied around hers. "Smile," he whispers, low, controlled. "You're my girlfriend tonight." Her heart drops. Girlfriend? No one told her that. Laughter echoes, crystal glasses clink, and eyes judge every inch of her like she doesn't belong. But then, she does something unexpected. She saves him. A perfect answer. A perfect smile. And for a moment, Ethan forgets it's all fake. Hours later, in the quiet kitchen, not the grand dining room, he finds her eating leftover pie, barefoot, real. No act, no script. And something shifts. Fast, dangerous. But just as quickly, everything shatters. A voice cuts through the night. "You mean the girl you hired?" Silence. Lily freezes. The truth hits harder than the winter cold. She wasn't his girlfriend, she was a role. And she was never supposed to feel this way. But neither was he. He hired her for Christmas, but forgot to tell her she was the girlfriend. The wind cuts through Manhattan like glass as Lily Harper steps onto the marble driveway, her worn boots crunching against a thin layer of snow she wasn't prepared for. Not for this place, not for this night, not for the way the towering Caldwell estate glows like something out of a movie she was never meant to be in, and she pauses just long enough to see her reflection in the black car window. Cheap coat, frayed sleeves, breath uneven. Before the front doors swing open and everything moves too fast, voices, lights, warmth swallowing her whole as a tall man steps forward, composed, unreadable, his tailored coat fitting like it was made for a different world entirely. Ethan Caldwell, the man who hired her just 3 days ago with a simple offer. Holiday assistant, 10 days, $5,000, no questions asked. And now his hand is suddenly on hers, firm, controlled, pulling her gently but unmistakably to his side as dozens of eyes turn toward them. "You're here," he says quietly, like she's late to something she didn't know existed. And then, without warning, without explanation, he leans closer, his voice low enough that only she can hear. "Just follow my lead," and smile. Her heart stutters, confusion rising fast. What? But there's no time, because a woman in diamonds is already approaching, her smile sharp, curious, measuring. "Ethan," she says, "and this must be..." And there it is, the moment that changes everything. The second where Lily expects to hear assistant, or helper, or anything that makes sense, but instead Ethan's grip tightens just slightly as he says, effortlessly, "My girlfriend." And the word hits like cold air straight to her lungs. Girlfriend, no contract, no warning, no choice, just a role she never agreed to. And yet somehow, she's already in it, already standing there, already being evaluated by people who see through her coat, her posture, her silence, and she realizes all at once that this isn't a job anymore. This is a performance, a test she didn't study for. And still, something in her steadies, something quiet but stubborn, because when the questions start, subtle at first, then sharper, she answers, not perfectly, not like them, but honestly, disarming enough that the room shifts, just slightly, just enough for Ethan to notice, really notice, for the first time. And later, much later, when the music softens and the crowd fades into polished laughter, he finds her in the kitchen instead of the ballroom, sitting on the counter, barefoot, eating a slice of pie like none of this matters, like she doesn't belong to his world and never tried to. And for a second he forgets why he brought her here, forgets the deal, the pressure, the image he needed to protect, because whatever this is, whatever she is, it doesn't feel fake anymore, until a voice cuts through the quiet behind them, sharp, amused. "Wait, you mean the girl you hired?" And everything stops. The words do not echo loudly, but they land heavy, like something fragile breaking in slow motion, and Lily does not turn around right away, because somehow she already knows, already feels the truth before she hears it again in the silence that follows, before she notices the way Ethan's hand, still close to her arm, goes completely still, and when she finally looks at him, really looks, there is something different in his face now. Not the controlled confidence from earlier, not the effortless charm he wore in front of his family, but something tight, something almost uncertain, and that is all it takes for the realization to settle deep in her chest. She was not brought here as A choice. She was brought here as a solution, a role, something temporary and convenient. And suddenly the warmth of the kitchen feels colder than the snow outside. You hired me, she says quietly, not accusing, not loud, just stating it as if saying it out loud might somehow make it less real. And Ethan exhales slowly, like he has been holding his breath since the moment that voice interrupted them. Lily, he starts, measured, careful, but she shakes her head before he can finish, because the pieces are already falling into place. The contract, the vague instructions, the way he never explained what the job really was. And she laughs softly, not because it is funny, but because it is the only thing she can do to keep her voice steady. I thought I was here to help with Christmas, she says, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the counter. Not to pretend to be someone I am not. And there it is, the line that cuts deeper than anything else, because for her, this was never pretend, not the way she answered his family honestly, not the way she stood beside him without rehearsed words, not the way she felt something real in the quiet moments when no one was watching. And Ethan steps closer, just one step, like he is trying to bridge something he does not fully understand. I was going to tell you, he says, and for the first time, it sounds less like a statement and more like an admission. But Lily's eyes lift to meet his, clear, steady, and there is no anger there, which somehow makes it worse. When she asks, and he does not answer right away, because there is no version of that answer that does not reveal the truth, that she was never meant to know, not until it was over, not until she was no longer needed, and the silence stretches between them, filled with everything unspoken, until Lily finally slides off the counter, her bare feet touching the cold marble floor, grounding her in a way she needs right now. You should have told me from the beginning, she says, softer now, almost tired, and she reaches for her coat, the same worn fabric that suddenly feels more honest than anything else in this house. And for a moment, Ethan looks like he might say something that matters, something that could stop her, but the words do not come, because even he does not know what this is anymore. Not a contract, not a performance, not something he can control. And Lily pauses at the doorway, her hand resting lightly against the frame, not looking back as she adds, barely above a whisper, I was not pretending. And then she steps out into the cold, leaving behind the warmth, the lights, and the version of herself he thought he had hired. While inside, for the first time in a long time, Ethan Caldwell stands completely still, realizing that somewhere between the deal and the dinner, between the lie and the truth, he has already broken the one rule that mattered most, and he does not know how to fix it. The cold hits her instantly, sharp and unforgiving, like the truth she just walked away from, and Lily pulls her coat tighter as she steps off the marble driveway and onto the quiet street, her breath visible in the freezing air, each step slower than the last because she is not just leaving a house. She is leaving something she did not even realize she had started to hold on to. And behind her the mansion glows brighter than ever, full of laughter and music that no longer belongs to her. And she tells herself to keep walking, just keep moving, because stopping means thinking, and thinking means feeling, and she cannot afford that right now. Not when she still has rent due in 3 days and exactly $82 in her account. Not when this job was supposed to fix everything, not complicate it, not make her feel seen in a way she has not felt in years. And she almost makes it to the corner before she hears it. Footsteps, quick, uneven, not the controlled pace she associates with Ethan Caldwell, and she does not turn right away, because part of her already knows it is him, already knows he would not just let this end so easily. Lily, wait. His voice carries through the cold, less polished now, less certain, and that alone makes her pause, just for a second, before she slowly turns to face him, snow catching in her hair, her expression calm but guarded. You should not be out here, he says, his breath visible, his coat thrown on. In a hurry, like he did not think, like he just moved, and she almost smiles at that. Almost, but it fades before it can stay. Neither should you, she replies, her voice steady. And for a moment they just stand there, the distance between them filled with everything neither of them knows how to say, until Ethan steps closer, not too close, just enough to be heard without raising his voice. I handled it wrong, he says, direct. No excuses, no deflection, and Lily studies him, searching for something familiar, Something that feels like the man she thought she met in the kitchen, not the one who introduced her as something she never agreed to be. You think, she answers softly, but there is no sharpness in it, just tired honesty, and Ethan exhales, running a hand through his hair, something she has not seen him do before, something unguarded. I needed someone there tonight, he continues. And you are different from anyone I know. And she shakes her head slightly, stepping back just half a step, enough to remind both of them where they stand. I am not something you use because I am convenient, she says, and the words are quiet but they land heavier than anything else, and Ethan nods slowly, like he knows that, like he has known it for a while, but did not want to face it. I know that now, he admits, and there is something real in that, something that makes it harder for her to just walk away, harder than it should be for a job that was never supposed to matter, and for a second the world feels still, just snow falling, just two people standing in the cold with too many things unsaid, until Lily looks away first, down the empty street, grounding herself again. I cannot stay there, she says, more to herself than to him. Not like that. And Ethan does not argue, does not try to pull her back, but instead he reaches into his coat pocket slowly, carefully, like he does not want to startle her, and pulls out something small, folded, familiar. The contract, and for a moment he just looks at it, like he is seeing it for the first time, before holding it out between them. Then let me fix it, he says quietly, and Lily's eyes flick too. The paper, then back to him, uncertain, because fixing it would mean changing something fundamental, something he built this entire situation on. And for the first time since she met him, Ethan Caldwell does something completely unexpected. He tears the contract in half. The sound is small, almost lost under the quiet fall of snow, but to Lily it feels louder than anything else that night. The clean rip of paper that was supposed to define everything between them, and she stares at the torn contract in Ethan's hands as if it does not quite make sense, as if something this simple should not be able to undo something that complicated. But then again, maybe it was never the paper that mattered. Maybe it was what he believed about her when he wrote it, and now that belief is changing right in front of her, piece by piece. And Ethan lets the halves fall, not dramatically, not for show, just a quiet decision that lands heavier than any speech he could have given. And for a moment neither of them moves, because this is new territory, unfamiliar, unplanned, and Lily's first instinct is still to protect herself, to hold on to the clarity she had just minutes ago when everything made sense again, when she knew exactly where she stood, and yet now that certainty is slipping, replaced by something far more dangerous, something uncertain, something real. That does not change what happened, she says finally, her voice softer now, less guarded but still careful, and Ethan nods immediately, not arguing, not trying to rewrite the past. I know, he answers, and there is no hesitation in it, no attempt to soften the truth, but it changes what happens next. And the way he says it is different, not like a man making a deal, not like a CEO controlling an outcome, but like someone stepping into something he cannot fully control, and Lily feels that shift, feels it in the way he is standing there without his usual distance, without the invisible line he kept between them before, and it unsettles her more than anything else tonight, because it means this is no longer simple, no longer something she can categorize and walk away from without looking back. You cannot just decide that, she replies, though her voice lacks the certainty it had before. And Ethan takes another step closer, stopping just enough to give her space, but not enough to let her disappear from this moment. I am not deciding it alone, he says quietly. I am asking you to. And that catches her off guard, because this is not what she expected, not from him, not after everything that just happened, and she searches his face again, looking for the version of him she saw earlier, the one who introduced her like a role. But that version is gone, replaced by something more uncertain, more honest, and that makes it harder to leave, harder to protect herself the way she should. And she looks down for a second, grounding herself, noticing the way the snow has begun to settle on the torn pieces of the contract at their feet, covering the sharp edges, softening something that was once rigid, and she exhales slowly, her breath steadying as she speaks. I do not belong in your world. And it is not said with bitterness, just truth. And Ethan does not deny it, does not try to convince her otherwise with empty words. Instead, he follows her gaze to the ground, to the pieces of paper now half hidden under white, and then back to her. Then do not be part of my world, he says, and for a second she looks confused, caught off guard by the response, until he continues, his voice steady but different than before. Let me be part of yours. And that lands in a way she was not prepared for, because it shifts everything. Flips the balance she thought she understood, and for a moment neither of them moves again. The space between them filled with something fragile but growing, something neither of them planned, until Lily finally lifts her eyes to meet his. And there is still hesitation there, still doubt. But there is something else too, something she cannot ignore, something that makes her stay just a little longer in the cold instead of walking away. And for the first time since she arrived that night, the silence between them does not feel like an ending, but like the beginning of something neither of them knows how to name yet. The silence lingers just long enough to feel real, not awkward, not forced, just something new settling between them as the snow continues to fall, softer now, almost gentle, and Lily does not step away this time, even though every instinct she has built over the years tells her she should, because staying has never been safe for her, not when things start to matter, not when people start to matter, and yet here she is, still standing in front of him, still listening, still unsure why she has not turned around and walked away like she planned just minutes ago, and Ethan watches her carefully, not like he is evaluating her, not like earlier, but like he is trying to understand. Something he has never had to think about before, and when he speaks again, his voice is quieter, stripped of the confidence that usually defines him. You said you do not belong in my world. He begins, and she nods slightly, because that part has not changed, that part is still true. But then he continues, then let me see yours. And that catches her off guard again, because no one has ever asked that before. No one has ever wanted to step into her life instead of pulling her into theirs. And for a second she does not know how to respond, because her world is small, simple, not something people like him would understand or want to, and she lets out a small breath, almost a laugh but not quite. You would not last a day, she says, half serious, half testing, and something shifts in his expression, not offended, not dismissive, just curious. Try me. He replies, and the way he says it is not a challenge, not ego, just quiet determination, and that unsettles her in a completely different way, because suddenly this is no longer about pretending, no longer about a role or a contract. This is about choice, and that is far more complicated. And Lily glances down the street again, thinking about her tiny apartment, the flickering hallway light, the secondhand furniture she has carefully arranged to make it feel like something more than it is, thinking about the life she has built piece by piece without anyone's help. And for a moment she hesitates, because letting him see, that feels more vulnerable than standing in front of his entire family pretending to be something else. And yet something in her decides before her mind can catch up. It is not far, she says finally, her voice quiet but steady, and Ethan nods. Once, like that is all he needs, no hesitation, no second guessing, and they begin to walk, side by side, not touching, not speaking much at first, just the sound of their footsteps against the pavement, the city quieter than usual under the weight of the holiday. And after a few blocks, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore, the grand estate replaced by narrow streets, older buildings, dim lights that flicker instead of glow. And Ethan notices everything, not with judgment, but with attention, like each detail matters, like he is actually seeing it instead of looking past it. And Lily watches him from the corner of her eye, waiting for the moment he realizes this is not his world, waiting for him to step back, to create that distance again. But he does not. And when they finally stop in front of her building, she hesitates for just a second before pushing the door open, the familiar creak echoing in the small hallway, and she turns to him, almost giving him one last chance to leave, one last chance to keep things simple. You do not have to come up, she says, and Ethan meets her gaze without hesitation. I know, he answers, and then, softer, but I want to. And for the first time that night, Lily feels something shift completely, not just in him, but in herself, because this is no longer about surviving the night or finishing a job. This is about letting someone see her as she really is, and she is not sure which part of that scares her more. The hallway smells faintly of old paint and something warm, like someone cooking late into the night. And as Lily leads the way up the narrow staircase, She becomes painfully aware of every small detail she has stopped noticing over time. The uneven steps, the dim light that flickers just slightly, the quiet hum of a place that survives rather than impresses, and she slows down without meaning to, as if giving him one last moment to reconsider. But when she glances back, Ethan is still there, steady, observant, not uncomfortable, not distracted, just present in a way that feels unfamiliar, and that alone makes her chest tighten slightly, because she does not know what to do with someone who does not look at her life and immediately want to leave it behind. And when they reach her door, she hesitates again, her hand resting on the handle as she exhales softly, grounding herself before stepping inside. The space small but carefully kept, a couch that has seen better days, a tiny kitchen with mismatched dishes, a single lamp casting a warm glow that somehow makes everything feel softer than it really is. And for a moment she stands there, almost apologetic without saying the words, almost bracing for a reaction that does not come, because Ethan does not comment on what is missing. He notices what is there, the neatly folded blanket, the books stacked carefully on a small table, the quiet effort it takes to make something simple feel like home, and he steps inside slowly, as if respecting the space rather than entering it, and Lily watches him, waiting, still unsure what this means now that the distance between their worlds has disappeared. And after a second, she gestures lightly toward the couch. "It is not much," she says, her voice quieter than before, and he looks at her, not at the room. "It is yours," he replies simply, and something about that answer settles deeper than she expects, because it acknowledges something no one else ever has, that what she built matters, even if it is small, even if it is not impressive. And she moves toward the kitchen without thinking, needing something to do with her hands, pulling out 2 glasses and filling them with water, the normalcy of the action grounding her in a way she needs. And when she hands him one, their fingers brush briefly, nothing dramatic, just a small, quiet moment that lingers longer than it should, and they both notice it, even if neither of them says anything. And for a while they sit in silence, the kind that is not empty, but full of unspoken thoughts, until Lily finally speaks, not looking directly at him. "Why did you really hire me?" she asks. Because now that everything else has been stripped away, she needs to understand what started all of this. And Ethan does not answer immediately, not because he does not want to, but because this is the first time he is actually considering the truth instead of the convenient version of it. And when he does speak, his voice is quieter than she has ever heard it. At first, it was simple, he admits. "I needed someone who would not complicate things." And she lets out a small breath at that, because that part makes sense. That part fits the version of him she thought she knew. But then he continues, "And this time there is no calculation in it, no strategy, but you did." And she looks at him then, caught off guard by the honesty in those 3 words, and he meets her gaze without looking away. "You made it complicated the moment you walked into that house, and did not try to be anyone else." And something shifts again, something deeper, because for the first time, she realizes that what she saw as a mistake, as a misunderstanding, was the very thing that changed everything for him. And she does not know what to do with that, does not know how to respond to being seen that clearly. And so she just sits there, her hands wrapped around the glass, her thoughts quieter but heavier, while across from her, Ethan leans back slightly, not distant, just giving her space to process something neither of them expected to find. And outside, the snow continues to fall, steady and quiet, as if the world itself is slowing down just enough to let this moment exist exactly as it is, uncertain, fragile, but undeniably real. The quiet stretches longer this time, heavier but not uncomfortable, as if both of them are standing on the edge of something they cannot fully define yet. And Lily shifts slightly on the couch, her fingers still wrapped around the glass, grounding herself in something simple while everything else feels uncertain. And she looks at him again, really looks, not as the man who hired her, not as the man who stood confidently in that mansion, but as someone who is sitting in her small apartment, trying to explain something he does not fully understand himself. And that realization alone softens something in her, even if she does not want it to. "You said I made things complicated," she says quietly, her voice thoughtful rather than defensive, and Ethan nods once, leaning forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, his posture less guarded than before. "You did." He admits, and there is no frustration in it, no annoyance, just honesty, and she studies him for a second before asking the question that has been sitting just beneath the surface. Then why are you still here? And that is where everything shifts again, because this is not about contracts anymore, not about convenience or expectations. This is about choice. And Ethan pauses, not because he does not have an answer, but because this one matters. This one cannot be calculated or rehearsed. And when he finally speaks, his voice is steady but softer than before. Because for the first time in a long time, I do not want something easy, and the words settle between them. Simple but heavy with meaning. And Lily feels it. Feels the way it changes the air in the room. Because she understands exactly what he means. Understands what it is like to choose something harder because it feels real, even if it does not make sense. And for a moment she looks away, toward the small window where snow continues to fall against the glass, her reflection faintly visible. And she thinks about everything she has worked for, everything she is protected by, keeping her life simple, predictable, controlled, and how quickly that has started to shift in just one night. And it scares her more than anything else. Because letting him in means risking something she cannot easily rebuild if it breaks. And she exhales slowly before turning back to him, her expression calm but serious. I do not know how to be part of your world, she says, and Ethan does not interrupt, does not rush to reassure her with promises he cannot guarantee. Instead, he listens fully, and I am not going to pretend to be someone else just to fit into it. She continues, her voice firm now, grounded in something she will not compromise. And Ethan nods immediately, not hesitating. I would not ask you to, he says, and there is something in the way he answers that makes it clear he understands exactly what that means, that this is not about changing her, not about reshaping her into something more acceptable, and that matters more than she expected it to, and the room falls quiet again. But this time it feels different, less uncertain, more like something is slowly taking shape, even if neither of them can fully see it yet. And then, almost without thinking, Lily stands and walks toward a small shelf near the wall, reaching for something she has not touched in a while, something simple, something personal. And when she turns back, she is holding a soft, slightly worn scarf, hand-knitted, imperfect in places but clearly made with care, and she hesitates for just a second before holding it out to him. This is mine, she says, as if that explanation carries more weight than it should, and Ethan looks at it, then at her, understanding that this is not just a scarf, not just something warm, but something she made, something she kept, something she is choosing to share. And he reaches out slowly, taking it carefully, like it matters, like it is worth more than anything he owns. And in that small, quiet exchange, something changes again, something neither of them planned, something that does not belong to contracts or expectations or worlds that do not match, but to something far simpler and far more dangerous, the beginning of trust, fragile, unexpected, and very real. The scarf is warmer than he expects, not just from the thick yarn but from something else, something harder to explain, and Ethan holds it carefully for a second longer than necessary before draping it loosely around his hands, his fingers tracing the uneven stitching as if trying to understand the time it took to make something like this, the patience, the intention, the quiet effort that no one applauds but still matters. And Lily watches him, not nervously this time, but with a kind of quiet awareness, because she knows exactly what she is giving him in that moment. Not just something to keep him warm, but a piece of herself that she does not offer easily. And when he looks up again, there is something different in his expression, something softer, something that has nothing to do with business or control or expectation. You made this, he says, not as a question, just acknowledging it, and she nods slightly. A while ago, she answers, her voice calm, but there is history in it. Memories she does not explain, and Ethan exhales slowly, almost like he is realizing how little he knows about her and how much he wants to. And for a moment neither of them speaks, because the weight of what just happened does not need to be filled with words. And then, almost without thinking, he shifts slightly closer, not enough to invade her space, just enough to close the distance that has been slowly shrinking all night. And Lily notices it, feels it, but does not step back this time. And that choice alone says more than anything else she could have said. And outside the window the snow begins to fall heavier, soft flakes catching the light from the street, turning everything quieter, slower, as if the world itself is giving them time to figure this out. And Ethan glances toward the window briefly before looking back at her. "You were right," he says, his voice thoughtful, "about me not lasting a day here." And she tilts her head slightly, curious, because she does not hear defeat in his tone, just honesty. And he continues, "Not because I could not handle it, but because I never took the time to understand it." And that lands differently than she expects, because it is not about his world being better or hers being less. It is about perspective, about what he has never had to see before. And she leans back slightly against the couch, her posture more relaxed now. "Most people do not," she says quietly, "and there is no bitterness in it, just acceptance." And Ethan nods once, like he is taking that in, like he is learning something he cannot unlearn. And then his gaze shifts slightly, noticing something on the small table beside her, a simple box, plain, unwrapped, sitting there like it has been forgotten, and he gestures toward it lightly. "What is that?" he asks. And Lily follows his gaze, her expression softening just a little, something more vulnerable flickering there, and she hesitates for a second before answering. "It was supposed to be a Christmas gift," she says, her voice quieter now, almost hesitant, and Ethan studies the box for a moment before looking back at her. "For who?" he asks, not pushing, just curious, and Lily lets out a small breath, her eyes dropping to the box again. "For myself," she admits. And there is something in the way she says it that makes him pause, because it is not sad in the way he expected. It is something else, something about learning to give herself what no one else ever did. And Ethan nods slowly, understanding more than he says out loud. And then, after a moment, he reaches into his coat pocket again, this time more deliberately, and pulls out something small, something he had not planned to use tonight. Not like this, not here. And he turns it over in his hand for a second before holding it out toward her, not pushing it into her space, just offering it. And Lily looks at it, then at him, confusion mixing with curiosity, because this is not part of any plan she understands. And Ethan's voice is quiet when he finally speaks, steady but different than before. "Then maybe you should not open that one alone," he says, and the meaning behind his words lingers in the air, subtle but undeniable, as the distance between what was supposed to be and what is actually happening continues to shift in ways neither of them can ignore anymore. The object in his hand catches the soft light from the lamp, small but unmistakably intentional, and Lily's breath slows as she looks at it, her eyes flicking from the delicate shape back to his face, searching for explanation, for context, for anything that makes this moment easier to understand. But Ethan does not rush to explain, does not fill the silence with words that might make it smaller than it is. Instead, he lets it exist, lets her take it in at her own pace, because for once he is not trying to control the outcome, and that alone changes everything. "What is this?" she asks finally, her voice quiet but steady, and he exhales softly, almost like he has been holding something back for longer than just tonight. "It was not meant for tonight," he admits, his tone honest, unguarded. But neither was any of this. And that lands in a way that feels more real than any perfectly planned moment ever could. And Lily looks at the object again, her fingers tightening slightly around the glass in her other hand before she slowly sets it down, freeing her hands as if she understands that whatever this is, it deserves her full attention. And she takes a small step closer, not all the way, just enough to close the space between them a little more. And Ethan's hand remains steady as he offers it to her, not pushing, not expecting, just present. And when she finally reaches out, her fingers brushing against his as she takes it, the contact lingers just a second longer than necessary, not accidental, not rushed. And she feels it, the shift, the quiet intensity of something that has nothing to do with roles or expectations. And when she looks down, she sees it clearly now, a simple ring, not overly elaborate, not something meant to impress a room full of people, but something chosen with intention, something meant for one person. And her breath catches slightly, not because of what it is, but because of what it means. And she looks up at him again, her expression searching, vulnerable in a way she has not allowed herself to be in a long time. "Ethan," she starts, unsure how to finish the sentence, unsure if she should even try. And he steps just a little closer, his voice low but steady. "I do not want you to pretend," he says, And the words are simple, but they carry everything he could not say earlier, everything he did not understand until now. Not for my family, not for anyone, not even for me. And she listens, really listens, because this is not the man who hired her, not the man who introduced her as something she was not. This is someone else, someone who has changed in ways she can see but still struggles to fully believe. Then what do you want? She asks, and the question is not defensive, not guarded, just honest, and Ethan does not hesitate this time, not even for a second. I want what this is, he answers, his gaze holding hers without wavering. Even if it is complicated, even if it does not make sense, even if it scares you. And the way he says it makes her heart tighten, because he is not asking for perfection, not asking for something easy. He is asking for something real. And that is the one thing she has always protected the most. And she looks down at the ring again, turning it slightly in her fingers, feeling the weight of it. Not just the metal, but everything it represents, the choice, the risk, the possibility of something she has never allowed herself to have. And for a moment the room feels very still, like everything is waiting for her answer. And she exhales slowly, lifting her eyes to meet his once more. And there is still hesitation there, still caution, but there is something else now too, something stronger, something that has been building since the moment she sat down at the wrong place in his life. This is not going to be easy, she says quietly, and Ethan nods immediately, not trying to convince her otherwise. I know, he replies, and that is enough, because he does not promise what he cannot guarantee. He does not offer a perfect ending. He offers the truth, and Lily studies him for one last second before something in her finally settles. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough, and she takes a small step closer, closing the distance between them fully for the first time, her voice soft but certain. Then do not ask me to be part of your world, she says, echoing her own words from earlier, and Ethan's expression shifts slightly, understanding where she is going before she finishes. Ask me to build one with you. And the meaning behind it lands deeper than anything else that night, because it is not about fitting into something that already exists. It is about creating something new, together, and for the first time. Ethan smiles, not the practiced version the world sees, but something quieter, more real. And as the snow continues to fall outside, covering the city in white, softening every sharp edge, he nods once, steady and certain. Together, he says, and in that moment, without contracts, without roles, without anything fake left between them, they choose something real.